I never realized the value of life until my son was born on October 14th, 1994. It was on this day that I realized that God existed and all living beings on earth were His blessings. My wife and I had been married for 8 years. We had waited to start a family because we wanted to create a stable family environment. We wanted to have a nice house. We wanted to have a stable job, stable income. And when we found out that my wife, Sonia, was pregnant, it was just the most glorious day. And we told the whole world. Indian families especially love children. They live for their kids. My father was already planning his education. My mother was getting his baby goods ready. My mother-in-law was knitting sweaters for our child. All of our relatives were excited. We went for the first ultrasound and they told us that we were going to have a boy. So it was a boy. That was really exciting. I still remember that day. We told everybody. We called every friend that we had. We told our relatives that the first son of the family was going to arrive. Names like Ashoka the Great, Akbar, and Ramses. I always wanted to have a son named Ramses. But you know, life has a lot of surprises. And you can't get too excited about anything before it really happens. There was definitely a surprise waiting for us. We went for the first ultrasound, then we went for the second ultrasound, the third ultrasound, the fourth ultrasound, and the fifth ultrasound, all within the span of 2 weeks. And I started asking questions. I said, why are we going for so many ultrasounds? The doctors wouldn't tell us anything. Then finally they brought us in for a meeting. The doctor told us that we had a problem. They said that there was a problem with the spine where it connected to the tailbone. On the ultrasound, it was showing up as being split. The possibility of the nerve damage on the spinal column, which carries all of the major highway of nerves to the brain, could possibly be damaged, which means that the child could have a mental retardation and or a physical retardation. It could be mentally retarded or physically retarded or both. So they told us this, and they said, you know, it would be advisable that we should abort this pregnancy. We should terminate this pregnancy now. I remember that weekend when they gave us that news. That was the worst weekend I think I ever had. Because imagine you have this beautiful gift. You've been promised this gift from God, and somebody comes down and just snatches it and takes it away from you. I didn't know what to do. So that was in the third month, approximately the fourth month, and then they told us we had about another month to go to make the decision, because after the fifth month, for sure, they could not do an abortion. My wife at the time, she was in a state of hysteria. She was on the verge of collapse, mentally, physically, psychologically. Karma is a Hindu term because Indians, who are predominantly Hindu, believe in reincarnation. When things like this happen, we treat it as payback, what Americans call payback. In other words, you did something wrong, so now you're being punished. So we were pondering, what did we do in our previous life to deserve this? I must have done something very wrong because I was being cursed. Then Sonia did something really unexpected. She didn't want to take the decision. And also because she felt that her mental state was probably not at its best. She was too emotionally attached already to the child. But now the question, it all fell on my shoulders. What do we do? So the first thing I did was I decided that I would go to a person in my life who I had always relied upon, which was my mother.
It's a very long journey. It never ends when they are disabled.
And I told her that I don't know what to do.
What doctor told you about the spinal cord that makes them immovable, cannot go for party, cannot sit. It's a very bad disease.
If you take a risk, you're not only risking the life of the child, but you're risking the life of the couple and the life of the family.
I would say, okay, I don't want to. I'll do that.
But she said that we should terminate. This was the big decision of my life. So I did something which may be qualified as unusual, but I said, I'm going to take a look at this situation just like all the other problems that I've dealt with in the real world. I'm going to take a look at this real professionally. And I decided to apply all of the reasoning and logic that I had learned through my education. Because I'm an engineer. I'm a trained structural engineer. And let me explain what that means. Because engineers deal with very complicated problems using tools of mathematics and statistics and laws of physics. We build buildings that are 100 stories high. We build bridges that cross rivers. We do some pretty magnificent stuff. So I applied those principles to this situation. And I said, what mathematics, what probability have the doctors created to make this judgment? Where did this decision come from? So number one, where's the data? Number two, where's the model? Where's the math? And number three, how good have you done? What's your track record? And I asked these three questions to these doctors. And I put it to them straight. And they looked at me like I didn't know what I was talking about. Or better yet, I looked at them because they didn't know what they were talking about. And this is what they told me. They said, number one, we don't keep any records. Number two, we don't know what a mathematical probability curve is. We don't know what you're talking about. We've never heard about that. Number three, well, if they don't have any records and they don't have a mathematical model, they sure as heck don't have any type of prediction. You're telling me to terminate the pregnancy. You're telling me to kill this child. And you haven't got any data. You've got nothing. You don't even keep any records. I was stunned. And so I took that and I went home and I thought about it and I said, these guys don't have their stuff. They don't have anything to prove it to me. I'm not going to accept it. I'm not going to buy it. I was going to accept whatever God had put as my fate. In India, we think of destiny as something that's pre-written, something that was written for you before you were born. And no matter what you do, you cannot avoid it. You have to accept it. And I chose to go. And then finally, the day arrived. And I remember it like it was yesterday. And that was October 14th. It was a Friday at 5 a.m. And I still remember to this day when I looked at him, his eyes were wide open. And he looked me in the face. And he smiled. He gave me a big smile. It was almost as if we knew each other. Like we were friends from a previous lifetime. And I held him in my arms for 1 hour. And neither of us blinked. And I asked the doctors, because they did a full examination, and he was okay. He came out just fine. No problems. No mental problem, no physical problem. He was in perfect condition. And I was so blessed. I took him back, showed him to his mother, and she was crying. And the two of us just thanked all of the powers that be that we made it. We made it. And we're really the luckiest people on earth. The name comes from two words. The first part, which is V-I, which means victorious. The second part is Raj, which means king. It stands for victorious king. It means a king who defeats all of his enemies, a king who survives all calamities, a king who is victorious. And that is certainly what Viraj is. He proved it right from the day he was born. God blessed me. I am truly the luckiest man on earth.